Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
Hey, happy Monday, everybody. That artwork was custom by the most awesome Dal Merge. His information is in the comments. He did an amazing job on the intro for us. We got a ton of people watching, so if you have comments, please post them in the comments section. And my name's Leo. I'm the monkey behind the keyboard, and we have a kick-ass show for you today. As always, Philip, how's it going, my friend?
Good, Leo. It's good to see you, and looking forward to the show.
Totally. Same here. Same here. Powerful Brendan.
Oh, hey. How's it going, Leo?
Going well. Going well. How about yourself?
Going well as well. Thank you for asking.
RW.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show, which, like Leo says, it's a killer show. So I'd like to take this time to introduce Billy Stanley, who was Elvis's brother for 17 years. Thank you so much for joining us, Billy. You have, I know, lots of great stories to tell.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So I guess I'll start off with earlier today, you posted a memory from Elvis and you guys going out on motorcycles Christmas caroling.
Right.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that was like at Christmas time with Elvis and all the shenanigans that you guys would do?
Well, how it started, Elvis was a lot like everybody else. He liked to ride around and look at all the houses decorated. And so just looking at Christmas lights. And then one year he got an idea of, okay, let's start stopping at people. I mean, riding motorcycles or in a car. We just stop the car, go up and start singing. And then they open the door and they see us. Elvis is out there singing Christmas carols. And, so that's how it got started. And somehow it got to the media here in Memphis, and they started calling us El's Angels.
That's awesome. I have a question to ask for that. The most important question of all. What type of motorcycles did you guys ride?
Well, Elvis got my brothers and I started, I was probably 13. And he got us Hondas getting started. Then as we got older, he got us Harleys. He said, it's time to get a real bike. Okay.
There you go.
Now, the funny thing is when he bought mine, he bought it at Super Cycle, and it was the owner's chopper. So Elvis bought it. And I was at the house the day it arrived, and I said, Elvis, you got a chopper out here? Because I went outside to see what it was. And it was unlike Elvis to have a bike like that. I mean, he had George Barris' bike, the one that he built, but Elvis really wasn't into the choppers. So he came out and took a look at it. He said, take it for a ride and tell me what you think. So I took it for a ride and come back. I said, wow, man, this is great, Elvis. He said, go in there and tell Daddy it's yours. I said, what? He said, no more Hondas for you. It's time for you to ride a real bike. So we went in there and had the paperwork done. So that night, he said, we were going to the movies, which he rented out at night. He said, Billy, let's me and you ride. So he rode his bike and I rode mine. and we rode to the theater. And when we get to the Memphis Theater, I was pulling into the parking lot, and he honked his horn to get my attention, and he just kind of followed me. So I followed him. We rode up to the front door, and he honked his horn, and the people come in and open the doors. So we go into where the concession stand is. I said, "We're going to park here?" He said, "No, let's do a victory lap first." So we went down one aisle to the screen and came back up the other aisle and parked it right there.
Oh, wow.
So that's just a typical day with Elvis.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
So I read somewhere do you still work for Harley or
No, I did I was a salesman for about 8 years in Nashville. I worked at Boss Harley Davidson, then I worked at Boswell's Harley Davidson as a salesman.
Now you said George Barris. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the guy that did the Batmobile.
Batmobile.
And the Monkey
Okay,
Mobile
I was
and all
like,
that.
is he talking about that same George Barris? Wow. Yeah, that guy made so many vehicles, like the Monkey Machine, the Batmobile. The list goes on and on. So that's awesome.
He did Elvis's chopper, the one that everybody sees. Now he made a Sportster that looked just like the one that Elvis had for Priscilla. Now, what I've heard over the years was nobody really knew what happened to it, but then, the guy that used to do the Tonight Show.
Johnny Carson?
No, not him, the one after.
Jay Leno.
Yeah. Bought a Sportster and was just curious, and they took the seat off, and then it had Priscilla's name on it, and they realized he had bought Priscilla's chopper.
Huh.
So
that's what. Yeah,
I thought
Jay
that was
Leno
kind of neat.
Jay Leno has quite the car collection. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, I've seen a bunch of them. I love them.
Yeah.
But so did Elvis. I mean, I tell you, he had a lot of cool ones. And I mean, I got to drive every one of them, and I loved them.
What was the Stutz like?
The Stutz, I mean, it looks really nice. And I mean, like Elvis, one time I was going to go on a date. He said, "Why don't you go pick her up in this?" I said, "What, the Stutz?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Trust me, you'll get their parents will like you a lot better if they see you driving this instead of your 57 Chevrolet." So I picked her up, and sure enough, when the parents came to the door, they saw that. First thing they said, "Whose car is that?" I said, "That's Elvis." And they said, "And what are you doing?" I said, "I'm his stepbrother." I guess the daughter didn't say who I was. But so I got along with her parents very well after that.
Now, I know you just said to them that I was the stepbrother, but between you and Elvis, he never used the step word, did he?
No. A lot of people don't know that shortly after we moved to Graceland in 1960, he tried his best to get our last name changed to Presley. But because he respected my father, which was a war hero, and, he knew my dad when he was in the service because he was stationed on the same base. And that was the only battle Elvis ever lost. He said, "Well, out of respect for your dad, we're going to leave it like this." He said, "But I will never call you a stepbrother." He never did.
That's awesome.
I read that when he first learned about you and your two brothers, that he went to the toy store and bought 3 of everything.
Okay. How that happened was the night we met him. This was in March of 1960, just shortly after he came back to Memphis. We were here maybe a week or 2 later. And my brothers and I, we were staying in a boarding school. So Vernon and my mom picked us up. And on the way, they kept telling us about this guy named Elvis. We didn't know. We didn't know who he was. I mean, I'm only 7 years old. I didn't know. And I mean, I hadn't really listened to a lot of radio or listened to records, really hadn't watched a lot of TV. So I didn't know who he was. So we get to the house, and we go downstairs, and they're playing pool. And all I hear is an 8-ball in the corner pocket. And then everybody applauds. "Great shot, E, great shot." And then it was like the Red Sea parted. And there was this guy standing at the end of the pool table, and he's looking at us, smiling. And there was just something about him. I mean, even as a 7-year-old, I was, "This guy's neat." He comes walking over, and he said, "What do we got here, Daddy?" He was looking down at us. he said, "These are your new little brothers." He reached down and picked all three of us up at the same time and said, "Daddy, I always wanted a little brother. Now I got three." So he started playing with us for a little while, and he dismissed Mom and Vernon and said, "Yeah, y'all go." He said, "I'm going to play with my little brothers for a little while." So during that time, he was talking to us. What kind of toys you like? Blah, blah, we didn't know what he was doing, and so we was telling him. And then he tucked us in that night. And then the next morning, it was like a fire drill. He come in. I didn't know he wasn't really a morning person, but he come running in there. "You got to get up. You got to get up." We was looking around like we didn't know what was going on. So we was trying to look for our clothes. He said, "You don't have time for that." So he put my brother David, the youngest one, on his shoulders and grabbed me and Rick by the hands. And we ran through the house and then went out into the backyard. And there was three of every toy you can think of. And I'm just going, "Oh." I said, "Whose are those?" He said, "They're yours." I said, "Can we play with them?" He laughed. He said, "Yes, they're yours." So we ran over to him, and he ran over with us. And we was looking at, "Wow, look at this car. Look at this, bike, this and that." He was just sitting there the whole day. And that's how we spent the whole day, was playing with Elvis. So that was a great way to welcome three little boys into your family. So
Yeah.
Well,
I
also
like that. Can we play with them? That's why I bought them.
yeah. Well, we came from a pretty strict military background. We didn't have a lot of toys or anything. So, when we saw that, I thought the guy was Santa Claus right there. Wow, this is neat,
Well, it sounds like he was really excited to have, extended family,
Yeah. Well, Elvis, like he said, he always wanted a little brother. And he loved the idea of having a big family, and, we added to the family. And of all the roles he ever played in life, being a big brother was one that he really enjoyed doing, and he was great at it.
It's funny because you said you were 7 and you met this guy and you said there's just something about him. And that's
it was just, he was so neat. I don't know what it was. To me, when I was looking at it, it was like, he's just like us, my brothers and I, except he's taller. That's it.
Well,
we gave him an excuse to be young again and play. Right. And so he told us as we got older, "I wanted you boys to have the same thing, the stuff that I never had as a kid." So that's why he treated us the way he did and gave us everything he gave us.
I think it was about 7 years old that I was at a friend's house, and if he's watching, that'd be cool. But his name is Lou Kingsbury, and I was at his house. He's a little older than me. So I was probably about 7 years old. So I think he's maybe, 50. I think he's 11 years older than me. So he was probably like 18 years old. And my mom and his mom were friends, and we were over there, and he had all these little football helmets, the little plastic football helmets that you get out of the quarter machine, lined up in his bed or whatever. And next to his bed was this record. It was Aloha via satellite with Elvis on the cover in his white suit. And I'm like, "Who's this guy?" And all I did was see the picture, and 7 years old. And I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, but he's pretty neat.
Exactly.
That's Elvis. And I'm like, "Who's Elvis?" And, you don't hear that name, "Hi, I'm Mark, I'm John, I'm Bob, I'm, Michael, I'm Elvis." Obviously it's a weird name that you've never heard before. And you're like, Elvis, at 7 years old, you're like, what kind of name is that?
Exactly.
So I started listening to his stuff, and immediately every Christmas, I'd be like, "Mom, Dad, I want Elvis books. I want Elvis records. I want Elvis this." And again, I know this is a hard day, but 4 years later, when I'm 11 years old, I get up to get the funny papers to read the comics. And on the newspaper front page, says Elvis is gone. And it crushed my soul at 11 years old. So I can only imagine, how it affected you and everybody else. But it's funny that you say you were 7 and you're like, "This guy's neat." And I was about 7 when I was like, "This guy's pretty cool," or whatever. So yeah.
When he passed away, I'll tell you, it almost killed me. The love I had for him. Growing up with him, there was a lot of, one of the things growing up with Elvis was, he talked about entertainers. He said it's just a job. They're nothing special or anything like that. And it wasn't because of who he was. but it was because of what he was, the way he treated my brothers and I, and the way he treated everybody that he ever met. And, you know, not the man on stage, the guy that was off the stage, that guy became my hero. And so that when he passed away, my hero died that day.
Yeah, mine too.
You know, I didn't have a rudder then. So, I mean, because he was the one I was only 24 years old. And he was, I mean, I thought in my mind, we still had a lot of time, and he had a lot more things to teach me. And one of the things I didn't know about was how to grieve. And I'll admit, that's when I got into drugs and alcohol. And then 10 years later, I had a dream. I was talking to Elvis. And it was just talking, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, I said, "What does it feel like being dead?" And he looked at me and said, "Don't you know?" And I took it right then. I said, "Okay." I put myself in a treatment center and got myself straightened out. So
that would do it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I'll say this much. I mean, rightfully so. I understand. I've lost someone early on as well. And you do always know that there's more that they wanted to teach you, that they had to teach you, and that you wanted to learn.
Right.
And of course, you don't know what you don't know, so you can't ever put your finger right on it.
Right.
But I will say it does sound to me, and this is fantastic to hear. When you were 7 years old and you first met him, just the fact that there was something about him that you and your brothers immediately identified with. And to me, just everything I know about him, it seems that right then and there, you all started learning from what he had to teach you about respecting someone else altogether, no matter who they were, like how old they were. Like, you guys were little itty bitty guys, and he still, as soon as he saw you, he probably spoke to you like you were any other person in the room, not like you were some little kid pain in the butt. And
now, he had a way of communicating, even when we were young, to where he never raised his voice toward us, but he had a way that he could talk to us and we could understand what he was saying. So, I mean, you know, like the earliest lessons was, you know, you never look at anybody's skin color or what religion they are or whatever. You know, you don't look at that. You look at their heart. That's what tells you what that person's all about. You know, and so I learned that at an early age. I mean, when I first started realizing he was something was one day, I was always taking to school in the pink Cadillac. In the first grade, they said, when you come out of school, look for the pink car.
Worst ways to go, right?
Yeah. So one day I walk outside and there's a bunch of people standing around the car. I wonder what's going on here. So I walk slowly up to it and he sees me. He's in the car. He slides over and opens the door, and I get in and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm signing autographs." And I said, "What's that?" Because I'm here again. I'm only first grade. I don't know what autograph means. He said, "That's where you put your name on a piece of paper." Oh. And so he said, "Would any of you girls like to have my little brother's autographs?" And of course, there was little squeals going on. And I mean, when I'm sitting in the car, I'm looking at all these, you know, not only just students, but parents and teachers. So I'm sitting here, okay. And then so he hands me a piece of paper and I reach in my book bag and pull out a red crayon. I write, I'm just learning how to write, Billy. And I hand it back. And so this went on for a few minutes and we were leaving. He said, "Well, I got to go." He said, "I got to get Billy home." And one of the girls said, "If you ever need a babysitter, let me know." And he said, "Okay, sweetie, I will." And there's all the squeals again. What is all this? So we're driving away, and I'm trying to figure what just happened here. And I said, "Are you famous or something?" He kind of laughed and said, "Well, some people think I am." And I'm here again. I'm 7 years old. I'm trying to think. Okay. I said, "Are you more famous than Mickey Mouse?" Because that's the only famous person I knew. He laughed. He said, "Well, some people think I am." And he said, "Well, I tell you what, I'll get Daddy to play some of my records and show you some of the movies." Because I hadn't seen any of his movies at this time. And I got to see every one of them down in the basement at Graceland in the projection room. So that's when I started here again, it took me a few years to realize that he was really big. So it was a gradual, realization of who he was. And by that time, it didn't matter. It was just, okay, that's my brother. So
that's cool though. That's
I
awesome.
mean, that's one comfort that my brothers and I took in, that he knew there was 3 people around him that weren't there for a paycheck. We didn't know who he was when we came into his life. And by the time we did realize who it was, I mean, we were brothers.
So speaking
that's
of
why
school,
whenever I hear everybody, Elvis on stage, and that's just Elvis. I'll never see him the same way anybody else. I mean, the fans do.
sure,
But to me, that's
sure.
just my brother. But I mean, I realized what he was because I did see it.
So
Hold on one second, Philip. Before you ask your question, so I'm just going to say this real quick, just for the laugh. So I'm just picturing it here. So we have this elderly grandma that probably has a picture of Elvis signed by Elvis and Billy on her wall, and that's awesome.
One of a kind, or a couple of a kind, maybe.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Totally,
cool.
totally. Philip.
Yeah. Speaking of school, did you ever bring Elvis for show and tell?
No, everybody knew it. I remember one day we was in school, and here again, this is first grade, and so I was in class, and one of the kids behind me was, "Hey, what's he really like?" And so I was kind of turned around talking, and the teacher saw me. Said, "Okay, Billy, go out to the hall, please." Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'm about to get paddled for this. So I stand there for about 5 minutes, which is like an eternity to, a 7-year-old. I was imagining the worst. And she come out, she said, "Okay, Billy, you got to tell me, what's he really like?" Ooh, okay. So I start telling her, he's the neatest guy I ever met. I couldn't really say a whole lot because the only thing I knew was he was just neat. I mean, he was fun to be around. He was like me, Ricky, and David, but just taller. So that's when I started realizing, there's something about it. Even when I was in school, I kept hearing, kids are kids. I mean, they'll say anything. I'd be in class or walking down the hall, and I could hear people pointing at me. That's Elvis's brother right there. That's Elvis. What is all the commotion about? Because here again, I didn't know who he was. So,
Now,
Makes
I heard.
sense.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that makes sense, but like you said, like that kind of oblivion that you had, I mean, it just goes to show like how strong a bond you were able to form all together and really cement that. Because as much as it meant to you and your other 2 brothers, obviously it meant the world to him because, you said, he knew you were on his side, and it was because he was your big brother, not because he was the king or anything like that. Like that's outstanding.
He was just a big brother to us. That was it. In 17 years of being with that man, I mean, I learned a lot, about life and love, God, everything. He was my mentor, my teacher. I remember when he took us all out of school, and which my mom objected to. And but Elvis, they needed education. He said, "Dee, I promise you, they're going to get a better education from me than they will ever out of any books." And she was right. I mean, he was right. We learned a lot.
I heard a story once, and I don't know if it's true. And I know there's all these stories and stuff gets changed or whatever. But the short of the story was Elvis, I guess, was in Vegas, and he was rehearsing, and he decided to take a break. And there was a janitor. I don't know if this is a true story, but janitor came by, and Elvis said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he said, "I'm doing good, Mr. Presley." And he's like, "No, you can just call me Elvis." And he's like, "Yes, sir." And he's like, "No, just Elvis." And so he's talking to the janitor, asking the janitor about his family and his life and all this other stuff. And some guys in suits or whatever, maybe from a record company or something, came in and said, "Elvis, we need to talk to you right now." And Elvis said, "I'm talking to somebody right now. I'll talk to you when I'm done." And they're like, "It's just a janitor." And Elvis said, "First of all, you're going to apologize to this guy. And second, you're going to get out of my face." and go wait until I'm done. And then if I feel like it, I'll come talk to you then. But I guess he had such respect for, obviously everybody, a janitor, that when somebody interrupted his conversation, he, didn't like the fact that they were like, oh, he's just a janitor or whatever. And that's one of the things that I love the most about him is how he did treat every single person.
I never heard that, but I can tell you, when I was growing up, I would see, I wasn't really impressed with a whole lot of movie stars and stuff. I was at the beginning, but then when Elvis said they're just entertainers, Billy, it's just a job. He said the people that dig ditches and work 8 to 5 are the real heroes of this world. He said those are the people that make this world go around. Those are the people you look up to, not the entertainers or sports stars or anything like that. He said they're just people just like everybody else. Yeah. And along that same lines, he said all my heroes wear uniforms. And what he meant was police, Army, Navy, all that stuff, fire department. Those were his heroes. He didn't care about hanging out with entertainers, Why? They did a show. So what? So did I.
That was their job.
Yeah.
Sometimes the last thing you want to do.
Job. That's all it is.
Yeah. When you're done working, is hang around with your coworkers. Not go home.
See, he wasn't really impressed with that whole Hollywood scene or anything like that. That's why he always came back to Memphis. He loved Memphis because that's where his roots were. That's it kept him grounded and humble. It's easy to go out to California and get wrapped up in, like he said, it's make believe. Everything out there is make believe, and after a while, you start believing it. He said that's when you really go nuts. So that's why he preferred Memphis.
Yeah, we've heard that story where a lot of people, you move out to LA and we've heard that people move out of there because it's very unrealistic.
It's a granola bar. Nuts, fruits, and flakes. That's all.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
The second you said it, I knew where it was going.
Well, it's funny because I met Art Carney once, and Art Carney and Jackie Gleason did the Honeymooners, and as soon as they yelled cut or whatever, Jackie Gleason went and had all these big parties, and Art Carney went back to Connecticut to be with his family.
Right.
So he didn't buy into that whole,
It's hard in a town that's built on telling stories and people who make a living, personifying those fake things, and drawing the line at where the acting stops. And I think that's what drives more authentic people, such as Art Carney and Elvis Presley, away from it when they don't need to be around it regularly. I can completely understand that. I think all of us have had instances where we felt that. Imagine having to be in it 24/7.
Right. Well, it was just where he, would go to work.
Yep.
Then afterwards, after the movies and stuff, he kept a house in LA, but it was just to go visit. It wasn't. He kind of lived in both places, but Memphis was the one he preferred.
I could see a big, yin yang on it as well, with somebody, just starting out their career and whatnot, definitely, LA to network and everything would definitely be the place to be. So one of the things that Elvis is greatly known for is his generosity. And one of the craziest things that I read was when FDR's, they called it the floating White House's 165-foot
USS Potomac.
Yes. When it got decommissioned, he bought it and donated it to Jude's Children's Hospital.
St. Jude's, yeah.
St. Jude's. That's amazing. I'm sure there was a ton of stuff that, he did, in his regular day-to-day life. What are some of the small things that, he probably did that a lot of people wouldn't know about?
Okay. That's part of the story. The rest of the story is he bought that so the kids from St. Jude could ride up and down the Mississippi River.
Oh, wow.
That's why he bought it. Mm-hmm. But then Danny Thomas turned around and sold it for the money. Elvis said, well, if that's all he wanted was money, I would have gave him the money. So it kind of upset him a little bit.
That's understandable.
But he bought it for the kids. That's what to give them a little pleasure, to give them a little joy.
Yeah.
He wasn't thinking, about a donation. he was trying to make these little kids happy. That's all he wanted to do. That's all he tried to make anybody was happy. Anybody he ever met. That's all he wanted to do.
How many times were you at a car dealer when you guys were buying cars that he bought someone else one? Like,
let's see, at least 4 or 5 times. You know,
yeah.
I'd be sitting there, you know, just watching him buy cars, and then somebody would be standing outside. He'd say, somebody go out there and get them. We'd bring them in and introduce them to Elvis, and you know, Elvis would start talking to him, and next thing you know, we'll pick you out one. And one lady said, well, I've already got my car's right here in the shop. We just come up here to wait. We're waiting on it to get fixed and, you know, get it out of the shop. And he looked at the husband and said, well, you go pick one out, sir. And he bought him one.
That's why he's the king.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good one.
I took a girl, my first date, and we were at Graceland. He said, let's go. So we all get in a car and we go up there and he's starting buying cars. And next thing I know, after he gives his cousin Patsy a car, and he looks at Patsy, he said, okay, Patsy, what are you going to do with your, and it was a pretty new Chevrolet she had. And she's, I don't know. And Elvis said, sweetie, what are you driving? She's, I don't have a car. Now you do. So he gave her that car. Afterwards, he said, how did it help you out on that first date, Billy? We're just friends, Elvis. We're just friends.
Now, was it the same car dealer every time, or were there different car dealers?
Well, no, we'd go to the Cadillac dealership and the Lincoln Continental dealership, and then we'd go to the Pontiac dealership. We was at the Pontiac dealership that day. He was buying Grand Prix. And about a week or two later, we was back up there, and they were doing something, and I was kind of standing behind him. He didn't know I was there. He said, where's Billy? No, somebody said, where's Billy? And Elvis said, well, he's probably got his nose stuck in a carburetor someplace. I said, I'm right here. He turned around. He said, pick you out a car, Billy. And I said, what? Elvis, I already got a car. I don't need one. He said, pick you out a car, Billy. I said, all right. So, now Rick and David had got their Trans Ams. So I had to be a little bit different. So I picked a Formula 400. I couldn't get a Trans Am. That'd be like my 3 sons or something, you know, all 3 of us. You 3 boys dressed the same?
Now, were all these cars at Graceland, or were you still living there then?
I know. I was 18. I moved out of the house when I was 18 years old. Back in that day, that's what we couldn't wait to turn 18 so we could move out of the house. You know, who wanted to live with your parents?
Right.
So we, you know, Rick and I got our apartment actually before we got out of school. We had an apartment right across the street from high school. So, so we didn't go to school a lot that year. And that's the year Rick started working for Elvis. So, and I started Rick started in 70, David started in 72, and then I started in 70, later on in 72. So.
We got a question saying, didn't Elvis give his personal car to someone as well?
His personal car?
Like he was driving his car and somebody needed one. He said, here, take mine. I think is what they're asking.
I never heard that. You know, I mean, he never gave any of the cars that he had to anybody. I mean,
I think I saw that in like a made-for-TV movie about Elvis. It might be in the graduation.
Those are real facts.
The one directed by John Carpenter, starring.
Passed away. It's, you know, it's unbelievable. About the craziest thing I heard. I mean, this happened in the early 80s. I don't know how this person got my phone number, but they called me. And they said, Billy Stanley? I said, yes. Who's this? I mean, this was when you know, you couldn't, there was no caller ID or anything. And they said, Billy Stanley? Yes. Who's this? This is so-and-so. Okay. Well, she said, well, I just want to let you know that Elvis has now passed away. I said, what do you mean? He passed away at August 16th, 1977. No, him and his twin brother were living in Bolivia, and they got in an argument about some money, and Jesse pushed him off a cliff. I said, thank you, and hung up the phone.
Oh, my God.
Stuff I've heard you wouldn't believe.
Wow.
You know, what tree did you fall out of?
The crazy tree.
Yeah.
And hit every
Climb
branch
back
on the
up
way
it,
down.
So
So, speaking of crazy stories, I
Right.
read that a couple of girls mailed themselves to Elvis.
yeah. Yeah. Now, I was there, but I wasn't actually when all this happened. But what they did was they mailed themselves as dogs, and so they delivered the box up to the gate, and the gate called up there, and Aunt Delta said, "We got enough dogs. We don't need any more." And so they're going to ship it off, and the girls started yelling. Then they broke it open, and Elvis, okay, if they're that bad, I will go down and say hello to them. So that he went down to say hello to them. If they was that desperate to meet him.
Now, here's the story that I'm sure you've told before and been asked before, and I know I think you were a little young at the time, but what about when the Beatles showed up?
Okay. Yeah, let's see. That was in 1966. I think it was around September. Elvis wasn't in Memphis, but they were playing in Memphis. And so it was either before the show or the day after or whatever, they came to the gates at Graceland, and they asked the guard, "Can we go up and have our picture taken?" And they said, "Well, you need to ask Mr. Presley that, Vernon Presley. He lives right around the corner." He gave him the address, and they drove over. So we was about to sit down for dinner, and the knock at the door. So Vernon said, "Get that, Billy." So I jumped up, went to the door, and I opened it. And this guy with this strong English accent says, "Does Mr. Presley live here?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I'm the road manager for the Beatles. My name is Brian Epstein. The boys would like to know if they could go up and get their picture taken in front of Graceland." And he's standing in front of me, so I kind of lean over. I see him in the car, and they're looking at us. And I said, "Okay, give me a second." And I closed the door, and when I did, I went running the house. "The Beatles are here! The Beatles are here!" I was just going nuts, because I couldn't wait. I was going to get a chance to meet them. And so my brothers come running to me, and then my mom said, "Stop! Whoa! Stop! And Vernon came to the door, and we was trying to get to the door. And Mom said, "Nope, you boys go upstairs." "But Mom, it's the Beatles. It's the Beatles." And it was like 4 months before then is when John made that comment that they were more popular than Jesus. Now, if he'd have kept his mouth shut for 4 more months, I would have got a chance to meet him then. But, when he said, my mom said, "No, you boys go upstairs." So we ran upstairs to my room, and we looked out the window, and we was watching them in the driveway. But that was in 1966. I mean, you mean the Beatles didn't come to everybody's house?
We get ladybugs every now and then, but no Beatles.
Jeez.
Oh, RW, that was bad.
Ladybugs, that was awesome. That's awesome.
So,
Grown.
do you have any other stories like that? Because obviously Elvis was Elvis, but to me, Elvis is Elvis, but to you, he's just your brother. Who did, because of Elvis, did you meet somebody that was like,
God, who didn't I meet?
right?
I mean, Anne Margaret, Rod Steiger, Gregory Peck, John Wayne, Jim Brown, Ernest Borgnine,
Nice.
Nancy Sinatra. That's probably one of my favorite stories. It was on the set of Speedway. Before he did the movie, Elvis told us that I'm going to be doing a movie called Speedway before he left with Nancy Sinatra. And he knew I kind of had a little bit of a crush on her because I like these boots are made for walking. And so we were on the set, and as we were there, we was watching him do a scene where Elvis pulls into the pits, and we were kind of off to the side. And they shot it a few times, and then the director said lunch. So Elvis gets out of the car, and I see him and Nancy talking for a few minutes, and they come walking over to us and said, "Okay, we're going to go to lunch." And then Nancy said, "Billy, would you like to sit in some of these cars?" Because I was a gearhead back then. That was mine and Elvis's bond. I said, "Yes." So she said, "Come on with me, and we'll catch up with them in just a little bit." I said, "Okay." So she takes me to all the cars, and she said, "Well, go ahead and get in them." So I get to sit in them, and I'm sitting there just picturing myself winning Daytona and all this stuff. I get in the last car. the one that Elvis is driving in the movie. And I'm sitting there and I'm just looking straight ahead. And she said, well, you know, before every race, a driver always gets a good luck kiss. And she said that, I was about to turn and she kissed me on the cheek. And I'm going, I'm 14 years old. I can't wait to get back to Memphis and tell all my friends what just happened to me.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And so he put her up to that. You know, later on in life, he told me, he said, remember that time? I said, yes, I do. He said, that's what I was telling her, is that you had a crush on her. You know, it said, would you just kind of show him around a little bit? Man, thanks, Elvis. I said, you're the best, buddy.
For real.
That's awesome.
So Philip, you had a question there.
Yeah. What about Dolly? Have you ever met Dolly?
Who?
Dolly Parton.
No. Well, I've met her, but it wasn't with Elvis. I mean, it was afterwards. I was working for a video production company, and so I did some work with her.
Right. Because I know he was trying to buy the rights to that awesome song that Whitney Houston did, that she wrote. And there's a big story about how he wanted the rights to it, and she wouldn't sell. Dolly wouldn't sell, which was probably
Whitney Houston. I remember her when she was just a baby.
Yeah, because her mom was
in
Vegas.
Yeah, she was just a little bitty thing when she was a baby the first time I ever saw her.
So Elvis encouraged you to get into automobile work.
Right. Well, he saw that I had a passion for cars. I mean, my mom said the first word. I didn't say mom or dad. I said car. So that was the first word out of my mouth. And he saw that. And so he encouraged me to get into racing and stuff like that. And in fact, I was driving his racing go-karts when I was probably about 10 or 11. And he was my coach. Then one day it was about 1968, 69. So I was about 15, 16 years old. So Joe Esposito has this idea. He said, well, let's time each other, because this would be the first time we'd ever done it. He said, let's time each other. Let's see who's the fastest on the hill. And I was like, I like that, the fastest on the hill. So everybody takes their turn. And I'm ready to go. And Elvis keeps saying, nope, you wait. Nope, you wait. And then he takes his turn. And now I'm the last person. So he comes up, stops. And he said, okay, Billy, get in here. And so as I'm getting in, he kind of leans down, doesn't really whisper in my ear. He said, okay, show him everything I've taught you. Don't hold back anything. I looked up at him and, okay. So we were doing 3 laps. The first lap, you're building your speed. So I go around the first time and I see him kind of pumping his fist. And I have it wide open. And I knew I was doing pretty good on that second lap, because when I was come up that hill, I could see he was just kind of jumping up and down. And I went flying around that thing. I come up for that third lap. And so I went back around, come back up to do my stop. I said, well, the look on his face, I said, well, you can't just pull up there and stop. You got to do something. So I come up there like I wasn't going to slow down. I locked it up sideways and slid right up to where they was at. They kind of jumped back a little bit, but I knew I wasn't going to hit them. I just wanted to show off a little bit. So I slid the car right up to him sideways, and I was looking up at him. You cocky little, and he, okay. And he helps me get out of the go-kart. And he said, okay, Joe, what was it? He said, he's the fastest. And the look on Elvis's face when he said that, I'm sorry if I get a little.
No.
I made him so proud that day. And I really love doing that, making him proud. So I did it for him that day.
Wow. Thanks for sharing, Billy. It's
that was a great story. Great story.
Yeah.
It's the way you tell the story is definitely, you can just hear the bond that you guys had. It's just incredible.
That was one thing. Now, one time this is when they were touring, and he wasn't doing commercial planes then. He was taking a commercial flight. A commercial flight to LA, and they were running late. So Elvis and everybody got in Vernon's Mercedes, and I had to wait for Ricky and Charlie Hodge, and I'm in the Cadillac limousine. I had to take them to the airport in that. Charlie was running late. He finally, because I'm going, Rick, come on, we got to go, man. We got to go. In 10 minutes, that plane's leaving. He said, wait just a second. And Charlie comes running, jumps in the car. He said, get on it, Billy, get on it. So I take it out of the driveway and get on Highway 51 heading back toward Winchester. And then you take a right on Winchester. When I get there used to be a gas station there instead of a convenience store. And it was a red light. I said, well, I can't stop. So I went through the gas station. And when I did, I come off of the gas station. And I swear, I think that thing was on two wheels because we come power sliding that thing around that corner. And I mean, I was hauling Heine down Winchester toward the airport. I had to be doing probably about 85 from there all the way to the airport.
My God.
And as we was getting there, as we pulled up into the thing, we finally got up behind Vernon's Mercedes just as we was about to drive onto the tarmac. Because Elvis didn't go through the airport. We just took him to the back of the plane. They'd lower the ramp, and he'd just go up the ramp, the stairs in the back of the plane and get on there. And when we get out of the car, you know, it was like he comes over and gives me this big hug. He said, everybody was saying he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. He said, I promise you, he will be here before we get in up to that plane. And you did it. I said, yes, sir. So, yeah, excellent. I mean, when it comes to speed, he knew I had no fear.
Now, speaking of that, tell us a little bit about your hound dog racing and what you're doing now as far as racing goes.
Well, one of the dreams I always had was being a professional racer. You know, I've talked about this with my brother David and a couple of other guys that work for Elvis, and they said, you know, if you'd have gone to him when he was alive, Billy, you know, and asked him, he would have helped you start that team, Hound Dog Racing. I do it in memory of him. Hound Dog Racing. It was always going to be Hound Dog Racing. And so they said, you know, if you'd have gone to him, you know, he would have helped you get that team started. You know, he would have funded it. But I said, you know, guys, I couldn't ask Elvis. I couldn't ask Elvis for anything. I never did. The only thing I asked him for was advice. I never asked for material things from him at all. Nothing. So, a thing called life, like I said, when Elvis passed away, my life went into a tailspin. By the time I got it straightened out, most guys were pretty much retiring. I even went to Buck Baker's School of Racing just to see if I still had it in me. And I took the course. And after I did my first laps, I come off the track. And one of the guys comes over and he's taking the steering wheel off, and everybody's walking over to my car. And I said, where are you racing at? I said, I'm not racing. I said, I just wanted to see if I still had it. They said, where'd you learn how to do that? I said, do what? They said, you were very fast out there. You were very, very good. I said, Elvis Presley taught me how to drive. They said, what? I said, yeah, that was my stepbrother. And they, what? But they had a computer, and somebody said, go in there and check the computer. I said, yeah, Google my name. He comes back. He goes, yeah, he is who he says he is. And they said, so after that class, I said, can I come back and do the intermediate? They said, no, we're going to put you in the expert class. What? And they said, now we get you out there with an instructor, and we do actual race scenarios with you out on the track. So I went and did that. In fact, I did good. They said I was probably one of the best ones they had that ever went through that school. And if you look at the list of people that went through Buck Baker's school, he said, Billy, you're right up there with him. He said, there was a kid named Jeff Gordon go through here, and he said, you're right up there with him.
Wow, that's awesome.
I said, guys, I'm 45. They said, you still got it. So I worked for a little while. I found out that racing industry is just as bad as entertainment. You know, that I had a lot of people say, hey, we'll get you sponsors and this and that, and nothing ever fell through. I even went out and bought a car because the guy said, well, if you get a car, I'll sponsor you. And I did. And then found out later, he said, no, something happened to my company. I can't sponsor you. Great. That just cost me $20,000. So,
Jeez.
uh,
Thanks for nothing.
everything just kept falling apart. And then after I had a heart attack, stroke, and seizure, I was kind of looking at what am I going to do? Because they said, you got to retire. My doctor said that. So I was looking online and I saw this thing called iRacing. So I thought I'd try it. And so I got into this with the same thought as this is professional racing. I got a sponsor, Performance Distributors, which is a great company here in Memphis, Tennessee. And my sponsor pays me, so much every month to go out there and race. And that's why you see me, I post a lot of the races I'm in. And, like Elvis told me on August 14th, 1977, don't ever give up on your dream, Billy. One day it'll come true. And it did. It took a while, but it came true. So.
Yeah, he never said anything about the timing, just that it would come true.
Yeah, he never said that about the timing. So.
Yeah.
I know we are coming up close on time. RW, I wanted to make sure you got all your questions in.
I just love hearing stories. So I didn't really have a lot of questions except for just like what Billy's sharing.
Just say
really,
go, Billy.
Yeah, exactly.
1, 2, 3, go.
Yeah.
Going back to Elvis's generosity, I read a story about was it you and him in the car and he passed somebody that
I know
was
which one you're talking about.
Unemployed.
Yeah. I was sitting in the den this day, and one of Elvis's favorite things to do was just to ride around Memphis, get in the car and ride around. So I was sitting in the den watching TV, and he came down and he said, let's go for a ride, Billy. I said, okay. He said, go get my wallet. And it was up in his case upstairs. So I ran up and got his wallet. Now, when I say wallet, this thing was so thick, you couldn't bend it. It had that much money in it. So, okay. So I take it and put it in my briefcase, and I get in the car with him. We're riding around. We're downtown. And we're going by a couple of churches and stuff like this. He said, I used to sneak in here and, watch a lot of the black gospel groups and stuff like that when I was a kid. And, wow, I didn't know that. He was telling me all this. And we see this, looks like a homeless guy walking down the street. And so Elvis sees him and he makes a U-turn, and we go back to where he's at. Elvis pulls up, and Elvis says, rolls his window down, and the guy sees him. Elvis? Mr. Presley? He said, no, please call me Elvis. He's okay. Elvis, he said, he said, I've seen all your movies and I've listened to all your records. I used to have all your records at one time. And Elvis said, so how you doing, sir? He said, well, I'm a little down on my luck right now. He said, but, it's going to change one day. I'm walking down here to the unemployment office, try to get a job. And now before we drove up, Elvis said, hand me the money. I said, how much? He said, all of it. Okay. So I take it. He kind of folds it over, puts it down between his legs. And as he's talking to the gentleman, I could see Elvis is just trying to get information from him, what was going on in his life and stuff like that. And as the guy was talking, he said, well, sir, it was nice to meet you. And he put his hand out like he was shaking it. But when he did, he had all that money in his hand. And the guy just kind of looked down at him and looked back up. And Elvis said, no, Mr. I can't take that. No, thank you. He said, everything's going to be okay. It's going to change. He said, sir, it already has changed today. He said, I'm repaying you for watching all those silly movies and buying all my records. And
Man,
the guy was just sitting there, and he started to cry. And he said, God bless you, Mr. Presley. And Elvis looked at him and said, sir, he already has. And when Elvis said that to him, I just went, God. I was crying like a baby then.
Yeah.
I've never seen such generosity before. But that's just the way he was.
man, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I get a little upset.
No.
When I talk about this, it's like I'm reliving. It's like that day. I can still see.
Yeah, sure.
And it's like, so, and I miss the guy a lot.
Yeah. Obviously you miss him for a different reason than me and the fans do or whatever, but yeah,
you miss him for the same reason. But you didn't know. What you saw was pretty much what he was on screen was pretty much the way he was in real life.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, do we have time?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Keep on
Go
going.
nuts, Billy.
Okay. We were coming back from the Circle G Ranch one night. We've been riding horses all day. And we was coming up Highway 51. It was called 51 back then. So this was around 67, 68. So we're driving up, and Elvis says, man, I'd like to stop and get a burger. And we was in the limo, me, him, and Red and Sonny and a bunch of other guys. He said, one of the guy driving said, well, you want to go through a drive-through? And he said, no, let's just stop over here. He pointed at a hamburger place. I just happened to know the people that ran it. So we pull in and we walk inside. Mr. Cooper was, I knew him because I went to school with his daughter before. And so we walked in and Mr. Cooper was working. And hey, Billy, he's kind of surprised to see Elvis. I introduced Elvis to Mr. Cooper and he said, nice to meet you, sir. And he said, if you wouldn't mind, we're going to pull a few tables together and have a couple of burgers sitting over here. He said, yes, sir. So we all go over and sit down and take our place. And Mr. Cooper comes over and takes our order. And we're sitting there talking. And we see a car pull up. A guy gets out. He's staggering a little bit. He comes walking through the door. And we didn't really hear much at first. Then all of a sudden he starts yelling. And then he starts cussing. And Elvis just kind of looks over. Now, you got to picture this. Elvis has got his cowboy hat on. He's got his chaps on. He looks like he just came out of the movie Chiro.
Yeah.
So he's sitting there, and he kind of looks over this, and he stands up, and so does Red and Sonny. He just puts his hand up. I got this. He walks over to the guy, and this is when we all started listening. And the guy, I guess he didn't recognize Elvis at first because he's kind of squinting. What do you want? Elvis, sir, Mr. Cooper, take care of this man's order first. He said, we don't mind sitting here waiting, because that's what the guy was, upset about because he had to wait. So Elvis said, we'll wait. We're in no big hurry. In fact, I'll even take care of it for you. I'll pay for it. And the guy squinted and all of a sudden he said, if it ain't Elvis himself. Elvis kind of smiled. Yes, sir, that's me. He put his hand out to shake his hand. And the guy backs off like, I don't want to shake your hand. I never did like you. I've always wanted to, if there's anything I wanted to do, he rears back and he throws his punch. And Elvis just does a side parry like this, takes his wrist and turns his arm behind his back and grabs him by the collar. Now, when they go to the door, his face kind of hits the door first as it opens up. And Elvis escorts this guy to his car. I don't know. We couldn't hear what he was saying out there, but he talked to the guy for a minute. In fact, he even opened the car and put him in there. And then he talked to him for a few minutes and he came walking back in. When he did, we all stood up and just applauded. Yay! And he took a bow. He walks over and sits down. Mr. Cooper come over and said, thank you, Mr. Presley. He said, please call me Elvis. He said, thank you, Elvis. He said, just for that, I'll take care of this. He said, no, sir. All I did was take out the trash. So, you can't pay me for that. So he was the hero that you saw in those movies in real life too.
He was a black belt, wasn't he?
Oh yeah.
I saw there's that one video where I think he has Red's fist or something on his throat and he just pushes the guy down and whatever.
Well, the big guy, which is David, my youngest brother, David was taller than anybody that worked for him. It was kind of, McGilla gorilla. Because, like Ed Parker said when he first saw David, man, they sure are growing big down there, don't they? David's like 6'3", and 230 something pounds. It's just muscle, But that's David, the brown belt, the big tall guy with the long brown hair. That's David.
So there was you, Ricky, God rest his soul.
Thank you.
David.
Yeah.
Red, Sonny, Lamar, and a bunch. Like, how many people were protecting Elvis at any given time?
Well, whenever he only had a certain number of bodyguards, but we all kind of, when I first started working for him in 1972, He gave me a Magnum 357 with a 6-inch barrel. That was the gun I carried, you know. But when we was going from one place to another, we all kind of worked as security. I mean, but it was Dick Grobe, Ed Parker, sometimes Bill Wallace, my brother David, Red and Sonny, and Dave Hebler. They were, and like I said, Dick Grobe. So that was security, and I think Dick was head security. So, but when we was walking someplace, we all kind of made a circle around Elvis to protect him. Now, I wasn't on this tour this time, but they were in Chicago. Now, this is my brother David, the little guy, my little brother. Elvis called him the headhunter for a reason. It's because David was always on point. If anybody was going to come straight on, they'd have to go through David first. So they're coming out of a hotel in Chicago, and David sees a flash in the corner of his eye. And next thing they said they knew, David had this guy's hair and had his head pulled backwards and had his 9mm shoved in his mouth. Said, "If you don't drop it, I'm going to blow your head off." He had a knife.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
And so the police, everybody jumped on that, and everybody else took off and went to the plane. So they had to wait for the police to bring David in, you know, up to the plane. And, you know, what I heard was the police said, "Man, this guy right here is very bad." Hey, yes, he is. That's my little brother. What? That's your little brother?
Didn't there was a few incidences on stage a couple of times too, wasn't there?
I wasn't there for that. I mean, but I heard that some guys jumped up on stage, but it was, you know, Red and Sonny, those guys, they had him before, had those 4 guys before they could do anything. I mean, it was an unwritten law with any of us that if anything like that would have ever happened, you know, if like in a concert or something like this, when he was on stage, that whoever did it wasn't going to get to court. He would have looked like Swiss cheese when we got done with him.
Yeah.
Because that was one of Elvis's biggest fears, especially after the Kennedy assassination, was that he said, "I can see some slimy looking guy just smirking in prison cell saying, 'I got Elvis.'" But now you'd never live to say that.
Yeah.
I promise you that.
Yeah, and you know,
something like that. Almost, I mean, but it was somebody was throwing a firecracker or something in a stadium or an auditorium, and it sounded like a gunshot. And Elvis just fell over on his back, put his hand up. They got me. He was playing, but everybody else, wow, you know, they freaked out. And then he started, whoa, everything's okay. Everything's okay.
well, you know, he's not wrong to have worried. I mean, you know, unfortunately, we saw that with John Lennon.
If John Lennon would have thought that way, he'd probably still be alive today.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, because that was such a tragic event right there. I mean, you know, John just, you know, even Elvis was like that. Why would anybody want to do harm to somebody else? But then he, you know, when he explained it, he said, "Billy, some people are so starved for attention, they don't care how they'll get it. They'll even kill somebody to get it." I went, wow.
Yeah.
That's a sick world we live in.
So you unfortunately didn't get to be part of the whole Nixon visit.
No. My brother Rick was part of it.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, he was there. Now the one thing nobody really knows about was the day they went up to go up to meet Nixon. You know, Secret Security takes all these guns. Elvis said, "I got to go to the bathroom." After he gives them the guns, so a guy goes in there with him. Well, Elvis walks in the stall, and just a second later, you go tee, and you see this little Derringer fall down on the ground. And the Secret Service guy goes over and said, Elvis reached out. "I'm sorry, I forgot about this one." Whoops. Whoops. Exactly. So, yeah, nobody really knows about that part. But, you know, yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing to me, because when he came back from it, I asked him, I said, "So you met Nixon, you got your badge?" "Yeah." I said, "So what was it like?" He said, "Well, you know, I'm sitting in the office, you know, walking around looking at all the paintings and stuff, and I see the famous painting of George Washington, you know, in the Oval Office. He's standing there looking at it, and he said, Nixon comes walking up next to me, and He said, man, he sure did dress kind of funny, didn't he? And President Nixon looked at Elvis and said, well, you know, I could say that about you too. He said, Elvis looked at him and said, sir, you got your show to run. I got my show to run. I said, you said that to President Nixon? He said, yes, I did. Okay.
Well, one of the reasons I, you know, again, wish I could have met him because he just seemed like he was genuinely a funny guy, like just witty and comical and could have did stand up, you know, like seriously.
He could have. I mean, because I asked him once, because he loved Johnny Carson. And I asked him one time, I said, why don't you do that show? I said, Colonel, of course, didn't want him to do it. He said, well, I would, but he said, I'm a little bit afraid. I said, what do you mean? He said, Johnny Carson's got the quickest wit I've ever. I said, Elvis, you're pretty fast yourself, buddy. I'm going to tell you. And he said, well, thank you. But,
so since you brought it up, what is your honest opinion? And you can say, I don't really want to talk about this, and that's fine, but of the Colonel.
This is a family show, so I can't really say what I really feel.
Fantastic.
Let me just say this. I didn't like the guy.
Okay.
When I was 7 years old, the first time I saw him, I didn't like the guy. And what really got me one time was when I first started working for Elvis, there's two things. One was Joe. We were in Vegas. Joe and I flew to Vegas 2 days before Elvis and everybody arrived, just so we could make sure hotel, security, and everything else was set up. So after the first night, the next night, Joe says, okay, well, we're going to call it a night because you got to go work for Colonel tomorrow. I said, what? He said, yeah, just go down there and see what he wants. I said, okay. So I walk into his office, which is one of the suites, and I see all the hotel staff breaking open these boxes of posters and these hats that said Elvis on them and all this stuff. I said, Joe told me I need to come down and see you. He said, yeah. I want you to grab a couple of them boxes and go down to the lobby and start hanging that stuff up. I kind of stepped back. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. He said, what do you mean you're not going to do that? He gave me this look. I said, I work for Elvis, not you. He signs my paycheck. He said, well, I'm going to tell Elvis about this. I said, you go right ahead. I turned around, walked out, just good wave goodbye, That's when well, I'm going to tell Elvis. He said it again. I said, go ahead. The next day they fly in town and I get up there a little bit late. And then so I'm walking in just as Elvis is walking out of his bedroom. And he sees me. He says, let's me and you step in my bedroom for a minute. I went, Billy, you hadn't even been working for him 2 weeks and you just messed up. I go in, he says, so I had a talk with Colonel this morning and he told me what you did. I said, yeah. He said, good for you. He said, I'm getting sick and tired of these guys that work for me feel like they got to bow down and kiss his hiney. He said, I'm tired of it. I'm glad you did that. I was, okay. I said, I just wanted you to, I wanted him to know you're my boss, Elvis, not him. He said, okay. He said, but let's just do me a favor. He said, if he ever asks you to do something again, do it. I said, okay.
Now,
but he never did ask me after that first time.
Or Billy, could you explain who the Colonel is for listeners who may not know who he was?
He was a crook, is what he,
Yes, that's exactly right.
The guy was a carnival hawker, is what he really was. I mean, he might. Here's a big thing I don't like. People say, "Well, he made Elvis." No, he didn't. If he did, why didn't he make another Elvis after he passed away? First off, Elvis's mom didn't even like Colonel Parker. I was riding with Elvis one day and we was going by Sun Records. And I said, that's where it all started right there. He said, yeah. He said, but I wonder what it had been like if I'd have listened to my mom. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, my mom didn't like Colonel Parker. I was supposed to be signing with Hank Snow, which they knew, and which Hank Snow was a Christian and all this stuff. So that's who they thought was going to handle Elvis's career. But it turned out Colonel Parker pulled some strings and he ended up with the deal. And he said, sometimes I feel like I sold my soul to the devil with Colonel Parker.
Yeah.
I mean, he might have been something in the 50s, but after that, he was a hindrance in Elvis's career, after 1960. Yeah, he got him the movie contract deal and all that stuff. But what he should have done was, I mean, when I came into Elvis's life, there was a lot of uncertainty going on with his career because he'd just come out of the Army for 2 years. Now, he served proudly, but you know why he went in the Army, right? You guys know why?
He was
'Cause he
drafted.
Because
Remember when it came out, they thought he was the Antichrist. They said, the government said, if we get this guy out, you know, of everybody's sight for about 2 years, they'll forget about him. Well, that didn't work. But he went in and served proudly. You know, he took it like a man. Okay, you're going to draft me? I mean, really? Why would you draft Elvis Presley? Why? We weren't in no war or anything else. But they took him. So he went and did like he was supposed to do. He didn't ask for special treatment. He went and served proudly. But he was uncertain of what was going to happen to him. That's why if you look at his movies and stuff in the 50s and 60s, I mean the 50s and his concert stuff, the way he moved around, and in the 60s, you didn't see that. It was the girl dancing, not him.
yeah,
People don't know that, but I tell them, okay, now watch the difference in the acting and everything else. It's different. I mean, his acting, I think, got better, but those first movies were really good. I mean, those are the ones I love the most.
King Creole.
Oh yeah, that one and Jailhouse Rock. Oh yeah. Wow, you know.
Now, was it true that he had, I wouldn't say a photographic memory, but I heard a story that when he showed up for like the first movie, Love Me Tender, if someone forgot their line, he knew what everybody's lines were?
Yeah. We saw the movie Patton several times, but after the first time we saw it, he knew Patton's speech at the very beginning of the film, right after he saw it the first time.
Yeah.
And I mean, now, here's something that most people don't understand. What everybody saw was just the tip of the iceberg of what his talent really was. He was everybody knows his singing, but his acting, I saw him do stuff around the house and just read lines and stuff. It would scare you to death. I mean, here's a perfect example. When I was growing up, one of the things that Elvis did a lot with my brothers and I was read from the Bible. Well, he would get into character and read from the Bible. Now, you talk about a Bible lesson you'll never forget. Wow, okay. But what he did, I mean, I saw him rehearse some lines and stuff, and it was like, man, if people could only hear this, I mean, see this right here, he would have been a great actor. I mean, he would have been up there with, you know, Clint Eastwood or anybody else. You know, he was that good.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Charo earlier because the other day I was bored and I'm like, I got to watch something. And I'm like, oh, Charo, let me watch that. And, you know, the only singing he does is the theme song and the rest is just acting. And it's a hell of a movie. Like, you know, it's not, but
oh yeah. Go ahead.
No, there's no but for me.
Yeah, there's a story that goes with it.
Nice. And I hear that because of the Colonel, Elvis could have been in A Star Is Born instead of Chris Christopherson, and the Colonel said, no, it'll ruin your career. And it's like, it's so sad to me that Elvis relied on him so much and that the Colonel had some weight over his head somehow that Elvis couldn't make his own decisions. And maybe if he could have done Star Is Born or some other movie, like you say, he could have been the next Clint Eastwood and his life might have gone down a different path or whatever.
Okay. Well, first, let's talk about Charo.
Yeah.
Elvis was kind of excited about doing that because it was going to be like a spaghetti Western. But Colonel Parker, in his infinite wisdom, instead of Elvis pulling his gun and shooting somebody, he just gave him a dirty look. And Elvis just, you know, that's when his dreams got crushed on doing this movie. Because Colonel said, no, my boy can't be doing that. You know, he's this and that. No, you're in a Western movie. You're supposed to shoot the bad guys. Right. You know, but no, Elvis, he told him to give him a dirty look. Jeez. Now, you got me going. I forgot. A Star Is Born. Yeah. Now, you picture Elvis up there doing that instead of Chris Christopherson. That would have been one of the greatest movies. I mean, Chris Christopherson.
Chris is
a
awesome.
Rock and roll
He's
star.
awesome. Yeah,
hey, look, you know, he's a great songwriter, but he can't sing a lick. I'm gonna tell you.
Come on.
I'm sorry.
No, disagree.
Have you ever heard him sing?
Of course, I got all
Okay.
that Chris Christopher.
Like I said,
He was a great singer. Have you heard him?
which one did you hear?
Hey, I
Just
have
the
Chris.
one.
Hey, Chris Christopherson's damn good.
He was a great songwriter. Don't get me wrong.
He was. He's one of
You
the
know,
best.
I mean,
One of the
I'll
best.
hand him that.
Yeah,
But I mean,
absolutely.
as far as singing, no. I mean,
Well,
I'm comparing him to Elvis. Okay.
all right, I'll
Yeah.
give you that.
Okay, there is
I'll
no
give you that. I'll
comparison.
give you
So you
that.
just leave him out of the picture.
Yeah, let's stick with the theme, Philip.
Philip's over here. Philip's over here going, I got all of Chris Christopherson's albums, and Billy's over here going, yeah, but did you actually listen to them?
Yeah, really.
He's all right. He's not Elvis as a singer, but he's
No.
still good. He's still good. I'm sorry.
But
Anyway, it was that true though that Elvis could have got that part?
Oh yeah, he would have nailed it. No, here's where I was going with it. You know,
Okay.
everybody says, you know, what could have been. Well, the sad part to all of this was on August 14th, 1977. That was the last time I talked to Elvis. He told me, Billy, when this tour is done, there's going to be some major changes. I'm getting rid of a lot of people. He wouldn't say what, but I was told later after he passed away, because my brothers, they happened to be there. They said, yeah, he was going to be doing a European tour. They were going to get rid of Colonel Parker. Jerry Weintraub was going to take over everything. And he was going to put Elvis, do a European and Asian tour, what Elvis wanted to do all along. You know, that's, you know, he wanted to do that first, but then they come up with a satellite special because Colonel Parker's infinite wisdom. I mean, yeah, it was successful, yes. But he could have done so much more. The guy, that's why I call him a hack. He hindered Elvis's career.
yeah.
In my opinion. I mean, you know, not my opinion doesn't mean much. This is just me talking, okay?
No.
I don't want to influence anybody's thinking, but what I saw was the guy he outlived his, you know, usefulness. Tom Parker did, you know, back in the early 60s. Elvis should have got into those better roles, you know, and even more dramatic roles and do a European tour. He just didn't think it was fair, you know, okay, we're going to put you in Vegas, you know, and then everybody can come see you there. No, I want to go see them. I want to go to England. I want to go to Germany. I want to go to Japan, you know, France, you name it. He wanted to go and be in front of his fans. That's what he lived for, being in front of his fans.
No, I agree with you. I always thought Parker was shady. So you're not, you know, influencing me. That's how I've always felt.
Yeah.
And there's this new movie coming out. You know, yeah. With Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker. Now, if they glorify Tom Parker, I'm going to be wicked mad.
I don't think they will.
I bet they do.
Oh, I hope not.
Here's the thing, guys. What are they going to talk about? They're going to just talk about the history, which everybody already knows about of them too. Are they going to go behind the scenes? No.
Right.
Because who's there speaking for Elvis on this? Nobody.
Right.
Okay. Then that's what when everybody tells me, oh yeah, there's Tom Hanks. Okay.
The world's nicest actor playing the world's biggest a-hole. Nice.
Yeah. Now that brings me to a question that I did want to ask. So I'm glad I just thought of it.
Sure.
I don't know how to word this. I have ADHD, so I might word it wrong. But
okay.
Do you feel that there's too many people in this world right now making money off the name Elvis Presley?
Like who's doing that?
Well, like
the only people I know of is the estate.
Right.
That's it. Now ETAs, if you want to say they are, yeah. I mean, you know, I don't know who else. I mean, I see some of these books that come out by people that didn't know him. I'm going, why are you writing a book? You know.
Right. But I'm saying like when I was in Memphis and I went by the Lansky brothers, now they're selling shirts that are like shirts that Elvis wore with Elvis's name on them. So they're obviously making money off his name by selling shirts that, you know, he might have worn or whatever.
If there wasn't a market for it, trust me. But the fans want anything that's kind of like what he had.
Right.
And so I think they should have whatever they want. I mean, that's the way Elvis was. I mean, I loved it when this was back in the 50s before my time, but he was doing an interview and said, you know, what if they want the shirt off your back? He said, well, I'll give it to them because they put it there.
Right.
You know, that's the way he was with his I mean, now we go into this. The love, everybody says he was unlucky in love. No. He had one love affair that stayed with him once he started his career, and that's what he had with his fans. They never turned on him. He never turned on them. He loved them with all his heart and soul.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what he lived for, is to be in front of his fans.
Every week of January 8th and every week of August 16th, Memphis is full, like to the brim of, you know, what is it, like 800,000 people or something go through Graceland a year or whatever. But
yes, I think it's 600,000. It's the second most visited place other than the White House. So.
Right. Yeah.
Philip was asking, what's an ETA?
Elvis tribute artist.
They used to be called impersonators, but they don't like that anymore.
They don't like that anymore.
So now they're called Elvis tribute artists. Yeah.
I met one once. I live in Massachusetts, and this is when I was like 12 or 13. I was picking up photos in a Walmart, like at the photo station, you know, back before digital was a thing, kids. And they called my name out, and my last name is Powers. And there was a large, like, I'm not a big guy anyway. I'm like 5'8" on a good day. And this guy, he's like 6'3", 6'4", and they just go in full blown Massachusetts, Powers. And I was like, oh, that's me. I'm Powers right here. And this guy turns around and he just looks and sounds just like Elvis Presley. And he goes, hey man, you say your last name was Powers? And I was like, yes. He goes, you had a relation to the impressionist over in Nevada? I was like, I don't think so. He goes, that's too bad. That's pretty good. And that was it. It's the only time I've ever met an Elvis impressionist. And he literally stopped to ask me if I was related to a well-known Elvis impressionist.
Wow.
It was surreal, to say the least bit.
Yeah.
Well,
guys, I hate to say this, but my phone just flashed low battery mode. So.
Oh, well, we'll wrap things up for you.
I hate to do that. I mean, because I'm having a lot of fun here with you guys.
So if you're having fun, would you want to come back again some other time?
Sure.
All right.
Awesome.
I'm going to ask you two really quick questions.
Sure.
One, since, you know, based on time frames and everything with him being a black belt, did he train with Bruce Lee at all? I know some stars did.
No.
Okay.
They never met.
And
I mean, we had not Colonel, Ed Parker, the other Parker.
Yeah, the better Parker.
He was the one that brought Bruce Lee in and kind of introduced him to everybody. So, you know, now Master Parker, he was probably the baddest man I ever met in my life. That guy, I mean, I didn't even like squaring off and do a demonstration with him because just that look he'd give you, I thought I was dead already. No, I don't want any more of this. We hadn't done anything yet. That's fine.
And last question, just to wrap everything up. All the toys that you were shown or given that first day, what's the one that you remember as being your favorite?
It was a little battery operated car. It was a red one that 2 kids could sit in. I mean, that was the first car Elvis ever gave me, was in March 1960.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That was my favorite.
Very cool. Well, we'll let you go, Billy. Thank you so much. Where do you like people interacting with you on social media?
Well, I'm usually on Facebook, you know. So
Sounds
if they'd
good.
like to join me there, that's fine, you know.
Awesome. And I got all the information in the show notes up above or down below. We'll let you go, Billy. Thank you so much this evening.
Hey, do me a favor. Send me the link so I can post the show on my page and stuff. Can you do
totally.
that?
Yeah.
Also, I gotta write to you so you can sign an autograph in a red crayon for me.
Okay. I think I need to be sitting in a pink Cadillac though when I do that.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Billy.
Hey
You have
guys,
an
it was
awesome
a lot
evening.
of fun, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, thank you very much.
Y'all have a great one. Okay.
You as well.
too.
Take care, Billy.
All right.
Good night.
Have a good night. That was awesome.
That
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
I was hoping someone would bring up Captain Marvel.
Oh, well, that
I was gonna. I was.
said-
I was letting him control the flow. You know.
Yeah.
Like he
Captain Marvel?
yes.
Elvis's favorite comic book was Captain Marvel Jr.,
I
Yeah,
did
his
not
fa-
know that.
his favorite character was Captain Marvel Jr.
which is where I'm guessing
original
his
Wiz
love
comics.
for capes came from when he did the 70s show.
and the hairstyle.
Yeah.
So Leo, obviously you weren't reading the Facebook stuff in our group there, so that's probably good because there was a lot of crap. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, I was trying to come up with the original question, so I was just trying
Are
to.
we still live right
We
now?
are, so I'm gonna.
Whoops.
Yeah. So why do you think Brandon asked that question?
That's funny stuff.
Okay,
Yeah, did you see that one by that John guy, man? That one was a dumb question, huh?
Man, what a pro! Oh wait, we're live. Never mind.
Then there was that question from that guy named Mike. Oh my
No,
God!
no potty mouth over here.
I just said crap. That's all I said. That's awesome.
Okay, Philip, where do you like people interacting with you?
Assuming I'm still alive tomorrow, you can get me on Facebook and also Dark Discussions podcast Facebook group and darkdiscussions.com.
Awesome, and I got all that in the show notes. If you can't remember, RW.
Hi. Oh, sorry. So you can follow me right down there at officialrwmartin.com. Long live Elvis Presley. So there's links at the bottom to everything that you need to follow me on. And if you haven't subscribed to the Dorkening by now, what is your problem? Subscribe to the Dorkening.
Awesome, Brandon.
So when I see the word live in a red box in the upper left-hand corner of my screen, that means it's live, right?
Most of the time, yeah.
This I think is
What?
pre-recorded.
What? I thought it was just being very positive and telling me to live. Oh, that's a world of difference.
That's awesome. Well played.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I'm Brandon Powers, also known as Powerful Brandon here on the Dorkening Network.
5'8".
You'd like to join me? I'd really like to see you over at the Powers Combined Facebook group. We're a geek group. We just we share memes, have laughs, and share lots of info. Our number one rule is don't be a jerk.
And no relations to someone in Vegas.
Yeah, no relation to Ed Powers, Elvis impersonator. That was well established at the time that I was 13 by another Elvis impersonator. Go figure. This is my life. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Brandon's Powers and on Instagram at This Brandon Has Powers. Otherwise, you can find me here occasionally, just so Leo doesn't have to say almost always sarcastically when he introduces me on things. And this on Mondays, as well as the Wednesday night Dorkening podcast at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And I want to say Brandon's Facebook group is very positive. I enjoyed it a lot. It's good stuff.
Well, thank you. I've worked really hard to weed out the jerks and no good nicks.
The crap.
The crap. Oh, God, no.
That crap is either up above or down below. Yeah.
Speaking of crap, as above, so below. Check the links, gang.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say. Speaking of crap, and you pointed up, and I'm like right
Speaking
above
of
you.
crap,
Are you above me?
have you? Oh, sure,
You're
that
above
would have been
me?
rough. Speaking of crap, Leo. I could have gone with. Have you heard Chris Christopherson?
He's good. He's good.
He's no Taylor Swift.
Billy killed me with that. Dude.
As a
He killed
songwriter,
me.
he is. He's as good.
No,
as Taylor
absolutely astounding songwriter.
Oh my
Really
gosh.
solid, brilliant.
Swift.
So
He's awesome.
tying into Elvis, I was watching a podcast thing or not a podcast thing, but an interview that popped up on my timeline the other day where they talked to James Burton, Elvis's guitarist for the tours. And when he was 13 years old, he wrote Susie Q.
Get out of town.
I'm like, wow, that's insane.
That is insane. 13? Yeah. I could barely figure out my favorite seat when I was 13. Good for him.
So was it the recipe for the baked goods that he wrote?
Yep, sold at the Hostess.
Judas
Priest.
Oh my God, wait a minute. Are we still live?
We are.
Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and all of his carpenter friends.
Speaking of young songwriters, Taylor Swift was doing it at 15.
Okay.
Okay, this has been a lot of fun. Follow these.
Yeah,
awesome
we're
people.
falling off the rails now.
Yeah, totally. For me, Leo Pond, Google me. But yeah, I run the Dorkening Podcast Network. But follow these awesome people. And with that, we'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Later.